Let's fucking go. A smart man would probably point out that talking about the best video games of 2017 on Christmas Eve isn't the best use of my time. Maybe I can cover some kind of Christmassy topic instead. I would argue that this is the perfect time to do it because hey, my cane turned up recently and fuck if I'm not going to use it. It gives me strength. The hyperbolic screenwriter in me has enough energy at the end of December to declare that every year has been better than the last when it comes to video games, and mostly that's incorrect. Definitely, I can look back at the last couple of years and see a few highlights, but they're generally few and far between. This year, though, has been a little different. What I usually do with these lists is top them up throughout the year whenever I play a game that really impresses me, and now we're in December, and that list is as long as all of the arms in the world. Clearly, some people have had a pretty good year. So I thought I'd start with the best games of 2017 because there's quite a lot to discuss with that, and also because we should be positive this side of Christmas. In general, there's way too much cynicism on the internet these days, so I think I should do what I can to focus on the good things that video games have done for us this year. Besides, I can always pile on the pessimism next week. We're gonna need these positive vibes later. To me, 2017 was the year when developers practiced a bit of internal reflection. It wasn't completely widespread because there were plenty of stories throughout the year that showed how much arrogance there still is in the gaming industry, but you had Ubisoft bringing Assassin's Creed back with a few creative ideas after a short hiatus, and Call of Duty stopped being Halo long enough to move away from a futuristic setting. That second one, it'll never last. But Capcom got in on the action with Resident Evil, a franchise that has slowly and rather painfully become a twisted parody of itself over the years, leaving behind the horrors of the old games but retaining the campy fun. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it leaves some of the newer games feeling tonally confused since they're still kinda trying to do the horror thing, but to no great effect. Resident Evil 7 aimed to shake things up a bit. It did a bit more than that. Though I do remember that there was some concern over whether or not switching to a first-person perspective would abandon the essence of a Resident Evil game. But that would be doing the efforts of Resident Evil 7 a great disservice. When I first got the knife and broke open a crate to reveal some plant matter, my fears that I'd be spending 9 hours playing an Outcast knockoff were quickly alleviated. To me, Resident Evil 7 was scary and exciting. Specifically, exciting because it was scary. It was a very strange first playthrough for me because I got way too much satisfaction out of the scary moments, and only felt genuine fear at one moment that was just dripping with tension. With Resi 7's success, I'm curious to see where the series goes from here. Personally, I'd like the horror games and the campy action games to run in tandem with each other to prove that Resident Evil can be good at both. At this stage, I just want something that can rival playing Resi 7 in VR, because that is where men become unresponsive puddles of goo. Still exciting, though. I am personally thankful for indie games. Not just this year when it seemed like the typical AAA bullshit was starting to consume any hope you might have had for creatively designed video games, but you spend enough time playing indie games throughout any year and you will have a fun time. They're just so wholesome and genuine, and have featured heavily on these kind of lists in the past and present. Hollow Knight is actually the game on this list that I played most recently because a bunch of people recommended it to me, and I just can't say no to that. Something about those eyes. The Metroidvania is a genre that has flourished thanks to the numerous indie games that have used it as the basis for their adventures, but not every game can or should use it though. It stands to reason that a Metroidvania will flourish if exploration is cherished. You wouldn't think it if you had spent any time looking at the cutesy artwork of this game, but Hollow Knight is a surprisingly bleak experience. The lighting casts a large amount of the environment in shadow, hammering home the feeling of exploring an uncharted cave full of monsters, which, when combined with the larger world you usually get with Metroidvania-style games, helps make your journey feel very insignificant in a way. You never feel too overawed while playing Hollow Knight though. It shares half a name with Shovel Knight, as well as the ability to make failures the player's responsibility, since your simple but effective moveset is more than capable of dealing with bug monsters in this massive ruined kingdom. Especially since being hit causes the game to pause for a split second just to underline the weight of the enemy's attack. But it's fine because you can heal as much as you want so long as you keep fighting back to charge up this little meter. I'm tempted to say that the brooding atmosphere, the ruthlessly simple combat, and the trepidation you have while exploring reminds me of another game, but I think we've had enough of people comparing games to Dark Souls for 1 year. I reckon we should all start playing more games. Development hell is something that a game usually doesn't bounce back from. You need consistency and continuity for a game to emerge from development as a functional product, and when it's being passed around between different studios, extending a 2 to 3 development cycle into 5 or 6 years, that's when you end up with Duke Nukem Forever or Aliens Colonial Marines. So I was surprised to hear that A Hat in Time started its journey in the summer of 2012, and met its Kickstarter goal a year later. Indie games don't tend to jump from one developer to the next, but they are being made by a small group of people with limited resources, or I think in the case of A Hat in Time, they had to pay out on all of these Kickstarter rewards, some of which affected in-game items and levels. Luckily, a longer development offers up an opportunity for extra refinement of a basic idea, and that I can see. I would say that a large part of why I love A Hat in Time so much is the nostalgia I feel for these types of games. I grew up on Super Mario Sunshine, which is a game that A Hat in Time takes direct inspiration from, with its sprawling maps, ease of movement, and these abstract platforming levels. But what I wasn't counting on was this huge level of variety. Super Mario Sunshine had different themes and obstacles for levels, but it didn't have a stealth level on a train, or an island run by the Mafia, or a legitimately terrifying horror stage in an abandoned mansion. It helps give A Hat in Time more charm than it had already, and covers up a few cracks you naturally get from an incredibly ambitious indie game. It's kinda crazy how many similarities there are between A Hat in Time and another high-quality 3D platformer that might be showing up later on this video, I don't know. And the fact that A Hat in Time holds up well in that comparison says it all, really. Hopefully the next one doesn't take 5 years to make, but I'm kind of okay if it does. Clearly it'll be worth the wait. How do you fix a problem like Sonic the Hedgehog? Well, if you're Sega and Sonic Team, you kind of don't. I'm not sure if they actually can't work out a solution to Sonic's problems, or if there's so much arrogance surrounding Sonic these days that they believe that his name and his crazed fanbase will do most of the work for them. For years now, it's felt like 1 step forward, 2 steps back with this franchise, but Sonic Mania sought to address these issues by forgetting about them, really. Them's your options. You can either assess where modern Sonic is going wrong on a technical and practical level, or go have some fun with classic Sonic instead. That guy knows what he's doing, as do the team of fans behind Sonic Mania, because one 5-hour trip through the main campaign is all the reminder you need that Sonic used to be fucking incredible. There was a period in time when momentum was important, when level design was built around the player's capabilities, and when everything just worked really well. I was particularly impressed at Sonic Mania's capacity to combine deeply nostalgic levels and environments with new mechanics, and sometimes just brand new worlds with completely unique ways of traveling through them. I'm not sure if any of these skills are transferable to 3D games, but I hope they are. I think everyone hopes they are. The craziest thing about Sonic Mania is how consistent it is. In the past, you've had to battle through moments of frustration or aggravation, way back in the days of the Genesis, but with Sonic Mania, there wasn't a single moment that frustrated me or a design decision that I thought was incorrect, and I'm amazed that we've gotten to that point with Sonic. If you guys want to make Sonic Mania 2 and fill it entirely full of original level ideas, please do that. At the very highest level, the quality of video games this year has been consistent to the point where we're going to be talking about most of these for many years to come. I think you'd have to go back to 2007 to find a year as jam-packed full of great games as we had with 2017. And that year had Portal, BioShock, Super Mario Galaxy, Uncharted, and a whole load of other icons of gaming history. I say this because in any other year, Horizon Zero Dawn would easily be Game of the Year for me, but it's not even in the top half of this video. Hot damn have we been spoiled! Over the last couple of years, we've seen a large influx of open-world video games because that's the trendy thing to do. But Horizon Zero Dawn puts most of them to shame, with gloriously detailed environments and a sense that you're exploring a living, breathing world filled with things to find that expand this world even further. This also ties in perfectly with the main character Aloy, whose primary goal at the start of the game is to venture beyond the starting area and discover what the fuck's going on in this world. I don't want to be fighting robo-dinosaurs all the time, I need to know what's happening. Actually, that's a lie. I would happily fight the robo-dinosaurs for hours on end. Or you can climb one of these Ubisoft towers, which is actually a very tall moving robo-dinosaur, who you can reprogram to reveal more information about your surroundings, and I just adore this aesthetic. Please, Ubisoft, just try putting one robo-dinosaur in the next Assassin's Creed game and watch those sales skyrocket. It really is that easy. I never did play the original NieR or any of the Drakengard games. I've heard good things about NieR's story and varied gameplay, but I'd always look at the scores it got from reviewers and get cold feet about buying it. Then again, the few details I know about the game smack of a creative process where ideas ran wildly out of control, with director Yoko Taro filling NieR with the farthest reaches of his mind. It's a great concept, but maybe you need a developer who's willing to embrace this kind of creative madness. These days, you probably want to draft in Platinum Games because they've got a knack for creating stylized action games and the confidence to say, "Hey, I got this, guys." I, for one, am very glad that NieR Automata, or NieR Tomato Soup, plays as good as it tells a compelling story. Certainly that seems to be the stumbling block of the first game, but Platinum Games know what they're doing. Slick gameplay is combined with huge, thematically appropriate variety, and even a little feature where you can add or remove chips from your Android to upgrade or, I guess, downgrade your offensive capabilities if that kind of self-imposed challenge gets you off. The narrative is engrossing and very self-reflective on themes like sentience and death. And it's great because if it ever becomes too heavy, you can always find solace in looking at 2B's arse. Things tend to make sense after that. I haven't quite reached the true ending yet because one of the other 25 endings requires quite a bit of work, but if it's anything like the original NieR, it'll be capping off one of the most compelling games of all time in perfect fashion. You make that porno, Yoko Taro, and you make it complicated and captivating. Video games these days are too easy, you know? I can understand that developers want to make their games more casual so they appeal to a wider amount of people, but is there no game out there that can give me the kind of challenge I need in my life? Because I'm starting to think that there isn't.
Here's a real high-class bout. Good day for a well high-class bout. You're red hot. Here goes. Well that. A great slam and begin. It's on.
For a while there, people were making serious comparisons between Dark Souls and a video game that has nothing to do with Dark Souls, and it was especially weird playing Cuphead because I knew it was similar to something, but not Dark Souls. Eventually, I decided that the run-and-gun style of combat with ridiculous set pieces and a punishing stance on difficulty had manifested itself as 1930s Contra. And I fucking love those games. You want to give them a cartoon-like aesthetic and a deliciously jazzy soundtrack? Why yes, that does sound like a good idea. The crazy thing is that Cuphead is another example, much like A Hat in Time, of an indie game successfully reaching the other side of a complicated development cycle. From my perspective, I did lose a bit of enthusiasm from the game after its third delay, but when you hear what the developers at Studio MDHR went through to get Cuphead off the ground, including a complete rebuild of the game and mortgaging their houses to help expand the team beyond 3 people, I'm amazed we got a game this incredible in the end. Also, can I just say that Cuphead might be the best looking game I've ever played? Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Cuphead might be the best looking game I've ever played. Cuphead took inspiration from 1930s cartoons with their exaggerated features and characterful expressions and brought them into the 21st century with twice as many frames per second. I consider myself a hard worker, but having to animate each frame of something so lively for the complete duration of a multi-stage boss fight and then multiplied 19 times? It is a feat of nature. I can't wait to see what Studio MDHR make next. Hopefully they get to keep their houses next time. I am so burned out on RPGs at this stage. It's not that they're all the same, but in the past 12 months I've played so many that feel similar. Plus you've also got to factor in the slow, sometimes mundane opening that's become an integral feature of an RPG nowadays, and I can't help but want to play something else. Something stylish, something that I haven't played in a while that gives me that relatable sense that I'm working towards something far bigger. If in doubt, Persona 5 can probably bail you out. Perhaps it comes as no surprise that one of the greatest JRPGs ever made has the kind of quality in it to drag anyone into its world for an outstanding adventure. The Persona games have always been decent, but Persona 5 acts as the culmination of everything that the series has been building towards. Graphically and musically, it's stylish as all hell, with some music tracks elevating some moments as highlights within the entire genre. By day, you're a school kid, but in the evening, you journey into the twisted minds of crooked adults that manifest themselves as richly detailed and uniquely designed dungeons that vary depending on the individual, and every part of that sentence made me slightly giddy. There's so much to do here, and with nearly 100 hours of game to work through, you're in it for the long haul. I'm not even halfway through and I love everything about Persona 5. Except maybe the batting cages, but that's just because I'm not good at it. Video games that imitate some reality a little too closely now. I'm being handed a golden envelope. Okay, I'm pretty sure it's a little early for this, but you know, there's one more to go till number 1, but maybe this works. Kane needs to go over there. Flip a coin, it says. Oh, there's a coin. There's a coin in here. Guess that makes sense. Go find it. There you go. Flip a coin? Sure. Well, how about that? This is the third year I've made one of these Game of the Year videos, and typically the number 1 slot has been the easiest for me to work out. When I sit down and look back over all of the games I've played over the past year, it usually doesn't take me very long to pinpoint the one game that has excited me the most, but wasn't so easy this year. I had a choice of 2 games with their own unique, mind-blowing qualities that set new industry standards, and put me in a position where anyone and everyone can find a huge list of reasons why putting one over the other is a bad opinion to have. But hey, that's what the coin was for. So I realised that Super Mario Odyssey showing up here kind of ends this list as an interesting spectacle prematurely, but that shouldn't diminish what an absolute knockout this game is in virtually every area. Nintendo have created one of the best 3D platformers of all time with the kind of creativity and world design that might even surpass some of Mario's other highlights. Something as simple as making throwing your hat an integral part of Mario's arsenal has completely changed how you navigate levels, leading to an expansive game that gives you the right tools to speed through it without too much effort. I went to various Nintendo events throughout the year and they always had the same 20-minute Super Mario Odyssey demo at each of them. I must have played that demo 4 or 5 times, but every time I found new things to explore and new moons to uncover. Every world is like a big playground that you discover at your own pace, and it's not even an adventure game by design. I don't care how Nintendo do it, but more please, however which way you like. So of course number 1 is the only game I haven't mentioned yet, and while there were plenty of other games that impressed me but didn't quite make the list, including my video game starring me, none were quite as good as Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Since this game came out in March, we tend to have forgotten how much pressure it was under at the time as one of the Switch's only desirable launch titles, and as a game that Nintendo were pinning all of their hopes on. Breath of the Wild also received 2 DLC packs that expanded the game by a fair amount, which is something that it currently has over Super Mario Odyssey, but the success of Breath of the Wild made everything a lot easier for Nintendo and Mario. Imagine for a second if Super Mario Odyssey came out in October with there being a lot of concern over Nintendo's ability to make big budget games, or if the Switch hadn't taken off like it has. I guess that makes Breath of the Wild the perfect release title for your new console then. I spent so much time playing this game and I regret none of it. Being able to move forward at your own pace in a Zelda game is so refreshing after decades of relatively linear experiences, and I can say with great assurance that I've never played an adventure game like this before in my life. Scratch that, I've never played a game that handles open world design quite like Breath of the Wild. You can set off in a direction with the knowledge that you will find something interesting to justify the time spent getting over there. There was a point this year when I was stuck on a train for a 4-hour round trip to Paris, but those hours melted away because I was glued to Breath of the Wild the whole time. I got so much crap done in that time, it was amazing. This kind of freedom is something that Legend of Zelda hasn't had for a very long time. Not to badmouth the other games, but being able to choose which divine beast you take down first, or to focus on upgrading Link through beating shrines, or even to go straight for Ganon in the center of the heavily guarded Hyrule Castle. It all equates for an insane amount of replay value. I beat Breath of the Wild after dozens of hours of collecting everything, and I instantly wanted to start again with all the knowledge I had gathered in that time. I don't think any game has done that to me. We have the new gold standard for adventure games, the new standard for open world games, and the new standard for Zelda games. Not bad for a launch title. This has been RabbidLuigi, and Breath of the Wild spent so long in development to ensure that each individual component was as refined as physically possible. You'd hope that Nintendo don't start from scratch when it comes to making the next Legend of Zelda game. Maybe they can take some aesthetics or some mechanics and rework it into a more linear, slightly more traditional Zelda game with dungeons and mechanics which are slightly a combination of the two. What I'm trying to say is, if you give me Majora's Mask, we might be set for life.